Yo, welcome to the Scripts YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about my perceived metagame for the Peoria Regional Championships at the time of recording. That's going to be in 4 days from now. As always, this is just my prediction. So if I were going to Peoria, I keep up on the meta. I thoroughly enjoy this. I enjoy testing for events. So even though I'm not going, I have been keeping up on it. This is what I would be expecting to play against if I were going to be playing in Peoria in day number 1, not day number 2. Day number 2, a little different, but for the most part, it's not too different at all. So every regional, I do this and I sit down. If you've never seen me do one of these videos before, this is how I think about regionals. Even before I was a YouTuber, I would be like, okay, what am I going to play against? And then I would check my deck against that perceived metagame. And I am pretty consistent at guessing these things. So it's definitely something that I have found to be super helpful. Now, with that said, there is variance. This might be the statistical breakdown of the meta for most people. You might hit 9 Stonejourners, and there's 9 Stonejourners in the tournament. Is that likely? No. Is it statistically possible? Yes. So let's go ahead and get into the decks I expect. Before I do that, the logo is always on the screen, but I have to give a shout out to my sponsor, Tabletop Village, located in Seattle, Washington, because I always forget to actually shout them out, and we just have the logo on the screen. So shout out to them. They sell on TCG Player, or if you're in the Seattle area, check them out. I love the store so much, and yeah, you should just check them out. It is the best Pokemon TCG centered LGS in the entire country, if not world. But anyway, the deck I expected the most of would be Palkia Inteleon. I'm going to have several decks I'm expecting to hit 1 to 2 of in day 1. This is also the order the most likely. So in Palkia Inteleon specifically, I'd expect closer to 2 of them. Now, the reason for that is the online events have been dominated by these shiny new toys. I think people are going to really realize, hey, the deck that I've been playing for months is still really good. I'm going to pilot it at this tournament because I think it can work. A lot of people are going to realize this engine is already darn near optimized, and the Lost Zone engine feels really good, but it's not quite there yet. I tweeted out the other day some of my Lost Origin testing thoughts, and one of the things was don't abandon established engines for shiny new toys. This is the main deck I'm referring to, though Mew VMAX and the Fusion Strike system engine, etc., is also one of them. The Inteleon engine is still good. People are shoving 85 Empoleons into their deck. Guess what doesn't care about that? The Inteleon engine. People are trying to throw Path into their deck for the Radiant Charizard. Inteleon doesn't really care about the Path either, though the Radiant Grid engine this deck does as well. People aren't prepared to be Marnied and Roxanne. Guess what Palkia can do? I'd be playing a Marnie if I were playing Palkia. I think it's very good in the deck for sure. But I would expect about 2, but anywhere between 1 to 2 Palkia Inteleons. I would be prepared for the matchup. I feel like no one's talking about it, and that's simply because it's not new, but they should be talking about it. People are going to bring it. A lot of people are going to play it. It's going to do pretty darn well. Number 2 would be Mew VMAX. Again, about 1 to 2 Mew VMAX on average. So if you're saying, should I play a Drapion in my list? I am personally would say yes, if it swings the matchup in your favor in a noticeable way. Some decks, no. Why would you ever play a Drapion? Palkia, for example, I don't think Drapion is the move. I think you try and get out your big, thick things. I think something like a Thornton would be better in Palkia. And then obviously you have the Roxanne, Path, Marnie, Path, etc. win conditions as well. And you just have your, okay, I'm big 280 things. But other decks, Lost Zone engine, maybe you're going to throw a Drapion in and turn a 50-50 into a 60-40. I think it's worth it just because I'm expecting more Mew than not. I would expect at least 1, maybe 2. I don't think I'd be surprised to hear someone hit 3 Mew, but probably not. Mew is in a great spot in the meta. It is a very familiar deck. It is fun to play. It is, I'm going to use the word easy to play. It's not like super easy, but look, it's not that hard to play. Most people have been playing it for a while. So I'd expect to hit 1 to 2 Mew VMAX. And if you're saying, Mello, should I tech a Drapion? Go check out the video on Empoleon for all the questions to ask yourself if you should be playing a Drapion or not. Just think about the same things. But I think some decks, yes, you should be playing a Drapion in the Peoria Regional Championships because it really swings the matchup from kind of close to really good. And if a single card tech can win me potentially 2 games or 2 sets in day 1, that is a great tech, because the Mew decks aren't really prepared, if you have a Drapion and then a way to get 3 more prizes, they're going to struggle quite a bit. Next one would be Lost Zone Box, specifically the Radiant Charizard single prize version, though I wouldn't be shocked if you end up hitting something that's got like a Raikou V and a Zygarde and that type of stuff. But this has been the popular one in the online scene. You may say Mellow. This has been like the most popular or the second most popular deck in like every online tournament. Shouldn't it be at Peoria? I am leaning towards no, because online tournaments tend to skew in the direction of the shiny new thing, especially when the shiny new thing is a single prizer. People are playing Lost Zone Box for a million reasons. It's fun. It is a very fun deck. It is new. It is interesting. It has a lot of options, but they're not particularly difficult options. Cramorant, then Sableye, then Charizard. The game plan is linear, but the game plan is also different every single game. Lost Zone Box checks all of these boxes. Is it a good deck? Heck yeah. It is a tier 1 deck for sure. If you're saying, I'm going to bring Lost Zone Box to Peoria, is that a good play? Yes, it is a good play for sure. Be prepared for the Empoleons. I'm not a fan of Empoleon, but most people are. Do not lose to Empoleon V is my biggest recommendation if you're going to bring the single prize Lost Zone Box. But should you be able to beat it? Yes. You would not recommend taking auto loss because I'm expecting to be fairly popular. I would not be shocked to hit 2 of them, but probably more like 1 of them. I think a lot of people are going to go back to the things they're more familiar with, and the higher the tables you're at, I think the more likely you're going to hit those established archetypes as well. You're going to hit a lot of Comfey, though. You may say, Mello, are you really think I'm going to only hit 1 Comfey deck? No. I did not say 1 Comfey deck. I said 1 Radiant Charizard Lost Zone Box. That feels like a pretty safe bet. I would expect to hit a lot more Comfey, and we'll get to those later. Kyurem Palkia, this is the last of the like 1 to 2. I wouldn't be shocked to hit 2 Kyurems if I were you, but I do think you're going to see a little less Kyurem than the other things on the 1 to 2 kind of, you might hit a couple of them. Kyurem's really good though. Kyurem's the one that can take 2 Empoleons, which is why I think I would tech for it, because you're going to probably hit a few Kyurems. Heck, Palkia can play an Empoleon as well. You could play Empoleon for the mirror match, so that's why I'd tech for it. But Kyurem Palkia is a good deck. Kyurem hits stuff really hard. It is a fun deck. Big, powerful, strong. I would expect to hit a couple of them. Can you take an auto loss to it if you're going to play something like a Stonejourner? Sure, you could. And I'm just throwing Stonejourner out there because there's always the types of decks like Stonejourner or Goodra or these big tanky decks that they really want to see. Tanky decks are like, I can handle this. Depending on the type of tank, you can handle this. I can handle this. I can't handle this. Can you handle a meta with this many Kyurems in it as a tanky deck? I'm not 100% sure. Yes, you could, but you might be leaving it up a little bit to luck there. So yes, I think some tanks will make it into day 2, maybe even higher than that, but there's going to be a fair amount of Kyurem out there. So be prepared for it, know the matchup. We're going to go down Lost Zone Giratina. I'd expected about 1 of them. I think on the meta discussion it was, or maybe it was the podcast, someone mentioned just very simply, people spent a lot of money on Giratina. It is the shiny new toy. And at a certain point, the sunk cost fallacy comes into play. And people are like, I spent $30 a piece on my V-Stars. I'm going to play Giratina. And with that said, I think Giratina is really good. I am one of the few, I'm going to use the word top player here. I'm one of the few top players who really likes Giratina. Almost everyone's like, it's fine, but like other decks are better. Strong. I don't disagree. There are better decks than Giratina, but I think Giratina is really good. I think several of you out there have realized that Giratina is really good. Hard to play. Every single energy matters, etc., etc. But I would expect to hit at least 1 Giratina. Kind of the same vein as Kyurem. It's another just big beat down thing. The difference is Kyurem, a little more streamlined, a little more linear. Tina has all these other cute options, the Cramorant, the Ninja, you can Aqua Return, the Luminion, all these other little things, the Sableye. So Giratina's got a ton of options that the other deck Kyurem does not, but Kyurem, a little more streamlined, a little more linear, a little more go boom than the Tina. So I would expect a lot of aggro players to lean towards the Kyurem as opposed to the Giratina, but I'd expect to hit some Giratina. Arceus Bibarel, this is a deck that I'm expecting will show up more as the meta evolves. Flying Pika, maybe. Giratina for sure. You're going to hit either Arceus Tina or Arceus Pika Tina. Maybe. Some of you will hit none of them, but the deck's good. Arceus is good. A lot of people think Flying Pika has a better matchup into the Lost Zone box than it does. It's the fine matchup. Don't get me wrong. 4 Marnies and making them escape rope away your Flying Pika is good, but it's definitely not like, oh, I auto win because I play a Pika, right? But anyway, it's a good deck. It has a pretty good matchup spread as well. Play a Drapion for the Mew matchup. So you have 4 Marnie, 4 Path, and a Drapion. You're in a pretty okay spot in the Mew matchup as well. Take a lot of good stuff. I'm actually a big fan of this deck, but I'm not expecting to be playing huge numbers, but I would be aware of it, be kind of cognizant that, hey, I might hit one of these at some point. Reggie's another deck that I think is pretty good right now. Most Mews are playing 1 Lost City and then have to Silene that Lost City back in order to actually get rid of all of your Reggie pieces. And sometimes you can just win before that by going Reggie knockout, Reggie knockout. I think Reggies are in a pretty good spot. You play some paths to get around the Empoleon because, like I said, people are going to play Empoleon for sure. And then you're too thick for the Lost Zone box to really body you. I'm like really upset at how hyped I am on Reggie's for the current format, but I think Reggie's is a better play than it has ever been. I wouldn't expect to hit it, but if I were you and your opponent flips over a Regigigas, I would not be shocked. The deck is good. The deck will be played. I wouldn't tech for it, but I would be familiar with the matchup. And if you have a tech that's good in one matchup and against Reggie's, that's a slightly better tech because, like I said, you might hit one. And if that tech wins you one matchup and the Reggie matchup, that's a slightly more interesting tech. Goo Guy, specifically Goodra with Comfey. I think Arceus Goodra might actually be more popular, but I'm pretty sure the Comfey version is just something people have practiced a little more. I think a lot of people are going to go towards the Giratina if they're going to play Arceus as opposed to the Goodra. But hey, Goodra is not bad. I'm not expecting to hit it. I would not tech for Goodra. I would be prepared for it. And the reason I wouldn't tech for it is I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of Kyurem out there. I think there's going to be a fair amount of Giratina, and Mew still has power tablets. All of those can kind of body the Goo Guy if piloted correctly. If piloted incorrectly, Goodra's going to run over it. Goodra can really punish people who aren't prepared. So if I were you, for sure, get a couple games in with your chosen deck against Goodra just in case, because if you hit one, the matchup gets way better if you know how to manage your resources in a way to actually win the game. I wouldn't expect it, but I would not be shocked if I were you. Hisuian Zoroark, the exact opposite of Goodra. This deck is ridiculously aggressive. Every time I played it or played against it, oh my goodness, this thing bodies any multi-prizer, especially going first. If I were you, I would be aware of Hisuian Zoroark. It's going to show up. Is it going to show up in big numbers? No. I think the single prize matchup is a little too sketchy for it, but the deck is very good. Depending on the type of build, you can potentially cover some of those weaknesses. We've seen people play Empoleon, like 2 Empoleons in their Hisuian Zoroark deck. That could be one of the good answers for Lost Zone box, as well as something like a Reggie's or anything like that. And then you just have your big OHKO potential. Zoroark is good. Do not be shocked if you play against it, but I wouldn't expect huge numbers of Hisuian Zoroark because I think, like I said, most OHKO players are going to gravitate towards something like Mew or more likely Kyurem and Giratina. Not like Mew doesn't OHKO, but the big aggro decks to me are the Kyurem and the Giratina in this format. Those are the decks I would personally be expecting. If I were going to Peoria, I would test against every single one of these decks in this order. The Palkia Intel, Mew, Lost Zone Box, and Kyurem Palkia, I would expect at least half of my rounds, if not more, to be covered by these 4 decks. I think they are the 4 best decks in the tournament. I think the better you do, the more likely you're going to run into them. But this metagame is really wide open right now. My last piece of advice for anyone going to Peoria as your last minute making changes to your deck list is consistency is the most important part. A powerful deck that is consistent will do better than a teched out deck because all the frickin' decks. Because you've even noticed there's a ton of decks I don't even list here that are probably going to show up at some point. I wouldn't be anticipating hitting them, but I don't think I would be shocked to hit a Blissey, maybe an Arceus Duraludon, Arceus Goodra, like all these other things that exist out there. It is a wide open meta. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Hopefully that gets you in the right mindset for what am I expecting to hit. If you're still making last minute deck choices, my biggest suggestion is pick the deck you're most familiar with. Playing a top tier deck well is going to matter a ton into a massive over 1,000 player tournament with this wide open of a meta. You cannot throw away any games that you're already winning. You have to take advantage of the games you're winning, maybe squeak out a couple games that you were losing and make a comeback, and that is the best way to be successful. Deciding between two different decks, a little less important than just knowing your deck inside and out. Remember to like and subscribe, all the other YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.